Goldylocks Productions broadcasts universal cosmic frequencies that unlock, awaken, and expand the consciousness of our worldwide viewers and listeners.
Goldylocks Productions presents the Inspiration from Spirit show with your host, Reverend Lea Chapin. The focus and goal for this show is to assist humanity in the awakening of a new level of consciousness that will bring peace to planet Earth.
Welcome to Inspiration from Spirit. I'm your host, Lea Chapin. It's another Monday. They roll around fast. I have a special guest, Lea Luckett, who is with me today. We're going to talk about her book, The Light in 9/11, Shocked by Kindness, Healed by Love. She is a 9/11 widow, and this is not only an inspirational story, but a story of strength and courage. So I'm so excited to have her with me. She is an entrepreneur. She's an award-winning author, mother of 3 beautiful young adults. She is also the founder of Cozmeena, the Enlightened Living, a brand of kindness. Cozmeena is a platform and social movement based on warmth, care, consideration, grace, and decency. Lisa's website, if you'd like to learn more about her, is www.lisaluckett.com. But again, first of all, I want to thank all the listeners that are here with me again, all the loyal listeners that follow my show. I want to thank you so much for being a part of Inspiration from Spirit, and those who just joined today, welcome. This will be an enlightening show. This show is always about education and bringing a new spiritual perspective to what's happening in the world. And so I want to thank you again for being with me. And again, before we start with Lisa, I want to say, don't forget to tune in to Goldylocks Productions Masterclasses. Go to GoldyllocksProductions.com. We'll talk about that again at the end of the show. But the show producer, Tiffany White Sage Woman, and I are going to be teaching our first masterclass together this Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be talking about the energy of not only of Atlantis, but we will be talking about how to move from fear to love in this time of chaos and moving into a heart space, living from a heart warmth so that we can be the change we wish to see. But we'll talk about that more later, but let you know that there's lots of exciting things happening here at Goldylocks Productions, and take a look at some of the other guest hosts and their shows, as well as taking a look at the master classes as some of the other folks are doing as well. But again, thank you. Thank you for being here today, and have a blessed, blessed day. Open your heart to receive this beautiful gift that Lisa's going to bring us, because I'm feeling she has a special gift for all of us today. So welcome to the show, Lisa.
Hey, Lea, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. I haven't seen you for a year. I'm like, man.
Time. Oh, it is flying in its simplicity, right? We're all just in a whole new groove of doing less, which is pretty interesting.
It is. And having, I think more impact, really,
Yes, for sure.
Well, tell me a little bit about what's happening with you. Just briefly tell the listening audience a little bit about what excitement's going on in your life before we get into your book and Cozmeena and Heart Pockets and your kids. And just tell me a little bit about what's happening with you now in this new year.
Oh, great. So the current news is I have 3 young adults all looking for employment that are being on hold in their lives because they're in their early 20s and things are not supposed to be stopped. So we're dealing with a very slow, I think on a global level, a national level, and a personal level, a very slow trauma, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I see it as there's great silver lining in it, just in the idea that it is forcing us to slow down and really untwist all those knots we've gotten ourselves into with the hurried social media, with the shiny object syndrome, with 24-hour news, to get a chance to take a breath and determine actually how we want to spend our time. But that's a practice, and it's not easy. It's not something that you just flip a switch and it happens. So.
And that's a great segue to go into your book, because I'm sure that's what happened to you. You had your world stopped on 9/11, on September 11th, 2001. You sent your husband off to work and never saw him again. Her book, The Light in 9/11, Shocked by Kindness, Healed by Love. This is an amazing, amazing story of strength and courage. So tell us a little bit about that morning. I know you had a 4-month-old, you had a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old child.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's interesting. Just to segue a little further, that 19 years later, the idea of 9/11 is still revered in so many ways, even though so much has happened in those 19 years. I mean, our world is so completely different. And from a macro or a global perspective, I see 9/11 in my study as very much an opening and if you will, a birth canal to a new order, which brings us to shows like yours today and, Tiffany's and your work on Friday. I'd love to sign up for that, by the way, in the master classes in Goldylocks Productions. And you know what? There's so much to learn here. My story was one unbelievably of being guided from basically the morning of 9/11 and getting a full beginnings of the full spiritual download that came ultimately like 4 years later. But so the morning of, my daughter was 7 and I was taking her to school a little late that day because she hadn't been feeling well. And I was walking in the house and I had my 4-month-olds on my shoulder. His name's Timmy. And I had my little guy Billy's hand in mine as we're walking in the kitchen door, and the phone was ringing and I went to pick it up. And my friend said to me, "Lisa, what tower is Teddy in?" And I said, "Well, the one with the antenna on it. Why?" And she said, "Well, turn on the TV because a plane just hit it and took off the top 15 floors.
Goodness.
So she didn't ask me what floor he was on because he was on the top. He was at 2 floors from the top. So what she had in fact told me is that he was dead on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So the beginning of the misinformation of 9/11 started with my first phone call. And that just speaks to actually a media statement that I have learned and it was repeated over and over, which is the misinformation of the media. But I digress. So I run to the television with the boys. I turn it on. It's on the PBS station here, Channel 13, which is on that tower. And I see the smoke and I see it billowing out. And my son Billy said I was screaming, "Teddy, Teddy, Teddy," and I'm stomping my feet. And at that time, we watched the second plane hit the second tower, and I knew we were in big trouble. So next thing I remember was sitting on my couch. I have no idea how much time passed, probably just a few minutes, with both boys. And something made me get up and deal. And next thing I knew, there were people in my house with me. I called my parents, as you do. They were in Maryland, so they hung up and headed up. It's like a 4-hour drive. So I was standing there. So the chaos of those few hours ensued, as it did in every household where people were not accounted for. And in my little community, there are 4 families in this little tiny town that's a mile square who lost people. And so we became, no pun intended, but ground zero for that time where people would come to our houses and just to disseminate and get information, because we were literally calling other people all the time to see who was where. And the wives of the people there became the front line. And so I was getting calls every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes from different women. Had you heard? Where are they? Anybody know? And as the day progressed, it became very clear that anybody above the fire was not coming back. I had a very unusual, which gets to the spiritual aspect of this story. There's several. I had a very unusual pre-preparation for 9/11 to handle it in a very different way than most people. My husband, Teddy, worked on the 105th floor for a company called Cantor Fitzgerald. And Cantor Fitzgerald logged in 658 losses that day out of 880 employees, and basically took them out. They had been in the explosion in February of 1993, and Teddy had walked down all those 105 floors, and it took him about 5 hours to get out. When he got home, he had so much smoke in his clothing and on his body that the water in the shower ran black for like 5 minutes getting it off. That explosion in 93, there was no smoke outside of any of the buildings. Mm-hmm. So when I turned the TV on the morning of 9/11 and I saw the smoke, I knew he was gone. There's no way. It was just so thick. And they had joked as they do on Wall Street, that if it happened again, they'd go to the roof. Mm-hmm. And clearly, but you hold on to hope, right? You're like, it's a fire. They can get there. They can get there. But the idea of guys running up 100 floors, I mean, like your logic and your heart are being pulled back and forth. The second piece was, so I had dealt with his death. I had dealt with terrorism and the concept that somebody had tried to kill him in this way years before this, 8 years before. And I also had a mother-in-law who was very worried about him all the time, in a kind of a frustrating way for me. She was a bit masochistic and certainly sadistic in telling me he was going to drop dead of a heart attack every time I saw her. So what I did is I ran his death through my mind because of this prompting all the time, and literally got myself so worked up at night, I'd be weeping next to him in bed, just thinking of him being without him, and just that craziness you can get yourself to in those dark and those wee hours. So those two things. So I ended up, we ended up learning, and I knew where everything was that we needed documentation wise. We bought as much life insurance as we could afford, and then made sure we went to bed well at night, having righted any wrongs, so that we could sleep peacefully and let it go. And that was about a year before 9/11.
I was going to say, did your husband have a premonition of dying young? Did you tell me that?
Yeah, well, you know what? He didn't have a lifeline that connected on his palm. So his lifeline was short, and which I noticed years and years ago. And we were in that place we were 40 years old. We just had a third child. We kind of knew what we were in for. And the truth of, he was pretty frustrated. Work was really tough. New York was tough. Commuting, everything. And, I looked at him one day, like 2 months before, and he was just done. I could just see it, and I know they say the soul knows when it's going to leave the body. And, that just always kind of made sense to me somehow. So anyhow, I'll stop my story there if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I want to fast forward to the day you called me. Do you remember the day you called me?
Okay, sure. Yes, of course. Well.
And I was very busy doing readings, and you called me. And I called you back thinking, I'm going to make an appointment. I'm just going to talk with her and then schedule an appointment. And then somehow your deceased husband came in insistently and wanted to give you a message, because I think you were finishing the book and had to go to the publisher. Is that correct?
Exactly right.
Okay.
So for your listeners to know that story, I was contacted by a friend of mine who's a psychic in Cyprus via Facebook Messenger that I needed to talk to you. And
one of my international clients. Right? Yeah.
Out of the blue, I had been working feverishly on this book to get it out in time for 9/11. And now we're in the beginning of July, and I'm hitting the upload button that day to just send it to press. And literally in those moments, I had just sent it. And I get this message from her, and I called you, and we caught up, which is amazing. Like, who calls somebody and has them answer the phone? And then we spoke later that afternoon. And you said to me that in that conversation, he passed along the message that it was of grave importance that we bring the message of love and forgiveness to 9/11, that we as Americans had gotten the message wrong.
Right.
Remember? And that it was something we were supposed to turn the other cheek and lead in the way of forgiveness.
Yes, I do remember that. Yes, because as I said, I wasn't planning on doing your reading, but your husband was so strong coming through me that it was like, no, I have to do this now. And I remember I'd done several readings, and I don't really like to text myself because I want to make sure I do a good job. But your husband was quite persistent. I'm not sure if that was his nature, but he sure was that day.
It's not. So clearly he had something he needed to tell you. He wasn't, I'm the pushy one. He was the easy one. So yeah, that was great. And I did actually stop the presses, and I got that in the book, and I got it in the beginning. And I wish, I did it so fast. If I was going to do it now, I would have done it, a little more eloquently and with a little more meaning. Now, 2 years later, look how much the world has changed. We're in this great awakening, and you and I know that. We've known that. Anyone listening knows this. We have been in this energetic awakening. In my opinion, 9/11 just part of the beginning of the explosive catalyst of it. Right? So much awakening, and so many books are written in the early 2000s, like mine. I got so just to finish for the story, and then I'll wrap it up fast. So the morning of 9/11, by 11 o'clock in the morning, I was watching my friends and neighbors spinning in circles in my living room. And I was in this incredibly clear, calm place because I had been prepared by my weird life, and these strange negative things were serving me. So the only way I can explain it is like being 10 feet back from the edge with my feet firmly planted, while everyone else was tipping on the edge of the abyss in full defensive posture. You know, I was kind of a weeble. I wobbled, but I didn't fall down. And in saying that, I literally was caught up in the fact that my nation had just been attacked. Like, this was my country, man. I was just as patriotic and nationalist as everyone. You know, you can't get my mind and my heart couldn't rectify Ted being gone, but I kind of knew. But it was bigger than that. It was always bigger than us. And that's a really important thing for people to know. I wasn't in this victim state at all. I was in the moment with everyone. And in that way, I wanted to help too, you know, and here I have people spinning around me saying, what can I do? What can I do? Lisa, what can I do? There's nothing anyone can do. And in that moment, Lee, for somebody that had been raised with a negative religious experience and really always knew there was something more, but didn't know what it was, wasn't really trained, I had this voice say to me, Lisa, let them help you. I was like, what? No one's going to help me. I'm going to do everything. I'm from the 60s, 70s, 80s. I am woman, man. Absolutely not. And then I let go and I surrendered. And when I tell you, Lee, I was overwhelmed with the feelings of gratitude and humility and this wave of love that literally lifted me. And that is where I have been. And I remember feeling feeling something behind me propping me up, like hands on my back, and thinking, wow, Teddy, is that you? And it's now I look back on it and I know I was being guided instantly in those moments. Like everything makes sense to me looking back on it.
And yeah, you've been through so much. I just want to kind of step back again with that message from Teddy of forgiveness. How have people responded? I know you were on HLN, on CNN, I think right after we first connected. You've probably been on many shows, but I know you were on that show. How many people, I guess from your point of view, are responding to the message of forgiveness and to being able to know that there's probably a higher spiritual message of what's going on here than, really what happened?
I wish I could report millions, but I don't know. I think people are still so caught up in their own experience. I think people who are enlightened, people listening to this show, can understand the concept of forgiveness. I think the great mass is still very much in the dark. I think people are still very victimized in this country, which I have, you and I have talked about this at length. We suffer from something that I've handled, I haven't heard it other places, but a national adolescence where we're very, very young and we don't have a lot of life experience. And the sad part about 9/11 is we haven't learned anything from it. We haven't taken the time or had the maturity, in fact, to stand back and say, what could we have done that could have brought this on ourselves? What was our behavior? Where is the self-awareness in our steps and behaviors that we've done around the world that maybe not everybody loves us? Maybe not everybody thought it was so great that we were helping. Maybe, are we asking or are we just doing? Are we assuming that's what things want? Because it actually, in the end, it really kind of serves us to do it. So, those kind of questions have not been really asked. And as a result, we're still really stuck in victimization. I think that the younger people, people under 35, 40 who were born into a different energy, anybody born after in the early 90s was born into the feminine energy. I think we all know that. They can receive this information without a blink. People over 40, 45, certainly my age, everyone argues with me. That I'm at this place where, I can't convince anybody of anything. You're either going to wake up and figure it out and see it and feel it like we do, or, so the answer to are people embracing forgiveness? Maybe if they're on a subconscious level, let's hope they are, and that this is all part of this wave we're in right now.
I met you for the first time last fall, September, and I went to the memorial, and I was in your home, and I remember watching this all happen on TV, and like everybody else, being just shocked and traumatized in some ways, but to be able to go to your home in Rumson, you're in Little Silver?
Rumson, Little Silver, Fairhaven, they're all kind of the same.
Yeah, I could feel the energy of kind of still the heaviness, and I know that we've talked about this before. There's still trauma there. There's still intensity. I could actually feel it as an empath. I could feel I don't want to say how do I say it? Even though it's been 19 years, I could still feel like it was still alive. Maybe that's what I'm saying. I could feel the energy there.
Very
So,
present.
so I wanted you to address that, in your community there, if you would, we're talking about forgiveness, but I wanted you to address it because that's what I really felt as an empath. It was like, I saw it on TV, but then never think, oh, I'm going to know someone, or I'm going to know a 9/11 window. I'm going to go to this area. And then, you never know where life's going to take you. But it's like, oh, it just made me pause. It made a real not a heaviness within me, but there was a pause of, this energy is still palpable.
Very present. It's very present.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to, so it's really what I love. I just like saying this word. It's the megalopolis. It's the 50 million people population between Boston and Washington that were 1 degree separated from someone who died or a family that they knew. I mean, the ripple effect or there are very few people that didn't know someone or know of someone. So it was very personal. And one of the things about 9/11, and I think all trauma, which really needs to be looked at, is it's very different if it's personal. Right. So that was a personal effect on 50 million people, or pretty much 20% of the American population directly. If you compare that to the shootings in Las Vegas, recent shootings, or you compare it to Columbine, or you compare it to the Oklahoma City bombings in '95, well, they were very sad for everyone. But if you were not personally connected, it was a news story, a tragic news story, but it didn't have that dimension of heart involved. And that's where we are right now is I think that, on a global perspective, what we're suffering from in the Northeast is the lack of permission of looking at things in a new way. There's a lot of generational living here. People are in the same towns they grew up in, and their grandparents before them and the great-grandparents before them, often in the same houses, and so no one has ever left. Well, how can you understand a new horizon if you've never left home and not been given permission or encouraged to leave home? So you go, the further west you go, you get a more open-minded experience because people just have more experience of understanding how great the world is and how great people really are. And, we really come from a place where we are all good. We learn the darkness, I think, and how we've been shown or taught or role modeled how to handle things. So the heaviness we feel here is still present because, again, I haven't been able to lead. People can't really tolerate the conversation. They know they're unhappy, but there's so many traumas that have followed this one without any treatment of the first one. So if 9/11 infused the fear of terror now at a cellular level, it moved that fear factor of humanity down the spectrum even further and then sealed over. And then we had Katrina 5 years later. And then but that didn't affect us, but it was a huge trauma for everyone and in the world to see something of that magnitude. And then Wall Street in 2008 hit the same exact population again. And then 2012, we had Hurricane Sandy here, wiped out this coast from Connecticut down to the tip of New Jersey, all the same people again, no one having had any kind of emotional treatment or emotional therapy because of that stoic, generational based upbringing.
And how have you, I want to tie this into something else here, what's happening currently, but how did you have the strength and the courage to be able to rise above your own angst and your own sorrow and to be able to write this book and to be able to take care of your children and to start Cozmeena, because we'll talk about that in a minute. But what was that ego strength? Where did you get that oomph to rise above, to be the beautiful light that you are today?
It was 100% coming through me. I will be honest. I think because I'd had 40 really tough, dysfunctional years in a family that looked normal, but was an alcoholic American, upper middle class white family that, had this trauma of things being buried and covered and no emotional education at all with which to handle anything. So by the time Teddy died, I was so twisted up in my knot of dysfunction that it was like literally being shot from a cannon to the other side of whatever and waking up out of the box. Mm-hmm. So what 9/11 did for me, and what I believe trauma does for people, is it shifts you to a totally different place. And it's that pain and that incredible heightened awareness that comes with great pain. when this opportunity to learn and see in a different way, to consider things you would never have considered because you just want that pain to stop and you just need to figure it out as fast as possible. So that's where so much spiritual enlightenment and so many people seek spiritual enlightenment and alternative thinking, because that is just too excruciating to just sit and try to pray away. I think that's where so many suicides and so many people that I know personally that have been awakened into the beautiful glory of what we know in the Enlightenment, and what I call the Enlightenment 2.0. This is the second wave of enlightenment now, and this is the fifth dimensional energy realm enlightenment, where we know quantum physics will one day prove that this energy field exists. Versus the enlightenment of shifting from the deity and dogma to science in the 1700s, the first enlightenment. So we're progressing as humanity. I think one of the really, really interesting parts about being alive today is that as souls, we've been chosen to be here right now because we are witnessing, and I'll say this really slowly, we have the honor and privilege of witnessing in real time the evolution of mankind.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, indeed. And that's this point I want to make now. You talked about the trauma. I think you said the trauma was infused within, or imprinted within the minds or the hearts of probably all who witnessed that event, not only in the United States of America, but probably, around the globe. That fear has been imprinted. And do you see a correlation in any way how this fear that now, this pandemic and this widespread fear that people have, do you feel like there's a correlation somehow between 9/11 and this fear, or is just a continuum of what's been imprinted within us from again, the beginning of time, but we continue to get triggered by external that creates even more fear in us?
It's absolutely playing out right now. It's absolutely playing out. And the saddest part of it is, I was hoping to address fear and this, where we are in our about things like national adolescence and really looking at how we can become wiser, because with wisdom, understanding that we don't really know anything and being those curious observers of our life becomes a much more positive way to be in the world, that life is happening for us, not to us. Just that message of shifting out of that negative to that positive way to see things. The COVID experience, it's almost like people are wanting it to be more dramatic. I don't mean that in any critical or judgmental way. What I mean by that is we've lost 200,000 people in America. That's a lot of people, but it's not the 30%, that's 3%, not even, of the population. It's not 30% as the Spanish flu took in 1918. And it's like we're treating it like it's 30%. And it's not that it's not serious, and it's not that it can't, we're still stuck where we are, but we're really not dying. But we're acting as though we're going to die. And the truth is, it is not a deadly virus. This is my opinion now. People might disagree with me, and I do not mean to seem heartless for anyone who has suffered a loss, for anyone who has suffered a job change, for anyone who's suffering through educating their children online. This is a tough time. My own kids, my own life. We are stuck right now in a holding pattern. But a holding pattern is a holding pattern. It's not the end of the world. We don't know what's coming. We have to be patient and wait, which is what's killing us, is we have to wait. But the point of the virus is AIDS is a deadly virus. If you got AIDS, you would die. COVID is a bad virus that if you have underlying conditions or your number just comes up, then you could go. But it's not, to me, the fear, your question being about the fear, that's how the fear is propagating itself. And then the media is feeding it and feeding it and feeding it and feeding it, because we're addicted to feeling fear, and it's comfortable. When something's comfortable, no matter, even if it's negative, we still hold on to it. So, it's a lot of, we're going to have to re-educate, spin, literally untwist the knot. That's the best example I can metaphor for it. We're so twisted. We have to purposely give ourselves permission to take a breath and just remember, look outside. It's a blue sky. It's gorgeous. The sun's shining, comes up every morning, sets every night. We're still okay. And that's what I wish was happening more. I wish we were getting more of that message.
And today on my Mary Magdalene call, every Monday morning, I bring forth the mystical teachings of Mary Magdalene and Jeshua. And this was the focus, which is interesting, was the power of love to heal fear. That the power of love is the energy of the Creator. And that's what we were designed to hold and carry, love. And that love will conquer and heal all. So as we take dominion and sovereignty over ourselves and know that we are beings of love, that we can manifest, create, make whole, the energy of that vibration, hold that within our energy field, that's stronger than fear. Absolutely. So as we have these tragedies of 9/11, or now we have the pandemic, or we have these mass shootings, we have earth changes, all these energies continue to propagate or to bring forth this fear within us that needs to be taken a look at, because that's not our natural state of being. And I know that this is a part of what your book is that as you designed or created Cozmeena, an act of kindness, it was rising above this level of our lower based emotion of fear and moving into that space of love and holding compassion and love. And so can we move into how you started Cozmeena?
Well, I love that, Lee, and that's always the reshape. That's the reset on everything, right? We have a choice because fear is conjured, right? We're conjuring fear in our mind. It's thoughts of the future. It's thoughts of the past, anxiety of the past, regret of the past, anxiety of the future. We can control nothing. One thing I've learned, if nothing else I've learned in this last few years with one of my kids, is we control nothing. And we think we can, and the truth is that's why being in this place of appreciation and gratitude, right, which brings that vibration up. And, those lower vibrations are very seductive. That vibration of victimization and of blame and anger, we love to be there. It is so comfortable. But, if we look at COVID, let's look at COVID for a second. Let's look at our own behavior. Let's say maybe COVID is Mother Nature's way of saying, hey, humans, you're doing it wrong. You're going to get a big fat timeout because it's time to reframe your purpose. Mm-hmm. Why are you here? What are you doing? You've been running in circles and spinning and staying superficial about things that don't matter, social media, who's going where, bragging about your lives, narcissistic tendencies that are never going to serve anyone except, negatively. Sorry. And that the point being, it's a way to look at it, right? If you look at this and say, wait a minute, I was doing it wrong. This is giving me a chance to be with my family, right, and actually play games, and have a conversation and bake. I mean, look at all the baking that's exploded. Granted, we're all 10 pounds heavier, but, exercise. But, there's the point is that there's a lot of ways to look at things that can shift that vibration out of fear and more into the anabolics of helpfulness, of love, of win-win, of what the American, what makes me sad, for lack of a better word, is that we as Americans, our gross domestic product is innovation. We rise when things are rough. We sit there and say, wait a minute, how can we fix this?
Right.
That's where we can be more proactive. And if fixing this means we're just going to get better at being bored again, because we lost our skill set for being bored. And what comes out of boredom? Creativity. Mm-hmm. And what comes out of creativity? Solutions. So.
And what comes out of when we have any kind of tragedy is bringing out either the best in people or maybe the worst in people, but bringing forth kindness to help your fellow brother and sister. So this time of inner reflection, of re-examining our lives. So when this kind of lockdown came down back in March, it was like, I got the download that I'm supposed to be teaching. This was the year I'm supposed to be teaching. I wasn't teaching. So I was listening to my inner voice, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, to be able to teach. And so I have this whole platform of Goldylocks Productions came forward, and these master classes now with Tiffany have come forward, and some other opportunities have come forward. So we can begin to stop and say, okay, there's a reason why I'm being stopped. There's a reason that my higher self or my own soul is asking me to listen and to make changes. What direction am I going in? You're right. We've been spinning out of control in many ways. And so this is an opportunity for us to step back and begin to listen to our true voice and move forward into the life pathway that we're to do. So if we're not listening, then, we become angry or stuck. And yet it's important that we again go into that quiet zone and ask. But for me, it was like, this was what was coming in for me at this time. And I have a tendency to create, which I love to create. And so the opportunities were there for me to do this. So I'm saying, anybody who thinks that their life is on hold or stop back, reflect, listen to what your passion is, go forth with it, and let the universe support you within your rightful purpose. And it's sort of the same, again, with you're talking about moving forward into Cozmeena and the acts of kindness. How can we serve, from a place of love, from our true spiritual self? How can we bring our greatest gifts onto the world to serve?
Right. Well, and your point is perfect in the sense that we have to actually be quiet in order to listen. And with all the noise we had in the world, no one was quiet. There was no way to actually be quiet. So quiet is now, again, right. We're sitting on the steps. We're on a timeout. So just think of it that way.
Think about what you're doing. Think about what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Quiet. There's no TV. Like, no. Put it down.
Yeah.
And just take some control back. And
it's like
recognize
it's about like being grounded as a kid,
Just think about it. Wrong. Precisely. I mean, the truth is, and I'm going to say something that again is may not be a popular way to put this. 3,000 people were killed in the 9/11 towers in total, right? Between, if that's kind of the Pentagon's, everybody, the planes, the whole deal. Maybe a few, maybe 3,300 out of all the tens of thousands of people that could have been killed. That's a small percentage. Out of the tens of thousands, millions and millions that could be killed in COVID, it's still a small percentage of the people who have been infected versus those who have died. You know what I'm saying? So it's how we are looking at it. When we look at our lives, do you remember there was a movie that came out and was actually regards to the kids being really overserved with homework and pressure and academics? It was about 10 years ago. It was called The Race to Nowhere.
No, didn't.
And I remember lying on the analyst's couch going, where are we going? Why are we doing 10 years of travel soccer with kids who are good, but they're where do you go with it? Travel soccer. No one makes a living being a soccer player at the end of the day. You've got 10 years of childhood, roughly between, 8 and 18, to put all kinds of neuro pathways in there of learning all kinds of things. If you've spent all 10 years doing the same thing, you've spent, the same year 10 times. So the idea being you only have a chance to one shot at childhood to get that unbelievable creative tree to grow, and then as adults, we just play it out because it's 0 to 21 by year. And then it's your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. It becomes a decade. So, everything, just slow down long enough to just take assessment of your life and how you're spending your time.
Right.
What is, and if you're really compelled to pick up your phone, why? Where's your self-discipline? Where's the self-discipline around structure, which we all hate the idea of being told to do something. However, how good do we feel when we check all the boxes at the end of the day versus how bad do we feel when we have that thing we should have done and we didn't do it? So self-discipline begins with the adult population to teach the kids. And, right now we're in such a really interesting time, and we'll get to Cozmeena in a sec, but just to finish this thought, we're in this really interesting time where kids are now the authorities on things like technology, right? They can Google anything they want. Do they need a library? Things are changing, right? So we're in a really interesting paradigm right now with parenting and children, and how do we as parents and older people serve the younger population? We don't have all the answers like our parents had for us. We can do that in the form of wisdom, of valuing the years you've had on the planet, the experiences you've had in your life that you have survived, that you've worked through, that you look back now with wisdom and knowledge. That's what I'm asking of anybody who's 40 and over, is to say, as I've learned very clearly in my life, it's my life experiences that prepared me to handle 9/11. So that 9/11 would be this unbelievable learning curve and this opportunity for emotional development and growth that I only dreamed about being in this place. And here I am. Through this tragedy, look what happens. And I will credit that, and now segue to what we're saying about Cozmeena and the brand. It was about the kindness of strangers that showed up for me, that show up for all of us.
And that was what you needed in your life. Because I know
that's what we all need.
I was going to say, I know you've had a rough childhood, and so for that was huge for you to be able to feel that love and to be able to feel the love from strangers. But
it wasn't something I expected. And I think that's where the difference is. You expect that your family, or this is how we're trained, I'll say how I was trained, that your family's going to be there for you and the people close are going to be there for you. Well, if they're stuck in the trauma as badly as you are, they can barely be there for themselves, let alone the fact that there was dysfunction in the family system. And one I think thing that played out significantly in the 9/11 family specifically is wherever you were broken, you broke further. The centrifugal force of the pressure of those buildings falling and the emotional presence of that energy that pushed out on all of us, we broke where we were already broken. So my family and my husband's family blew apart. They weren't good to begin with. And so I was left with nothing.
Right.
Never in a million years did I expect what I was given by strangers. And it was in that unexpected, it's in that non-expectation, that amazing gift of surprise, in this generosity and this kindness that literally was unerring. It came at me and to me and for me for years, long enough for me to sustain myself through deep psychoanalytic analysis when I was being shamed and bullied by my family and by people I knew. How could I ever be, so weak as to go to analysis? Well, guess what? It's a superpower. And my strength that you mentioned came from the fact that I had taken crap for so many years from so many people that 9/11 gave me the permission to never have to listen to another soul again. So I followed my intuition, and all of that guidance I was getting that morning, I just listened. Like you're saying, you just listened, because no one had the answers. I knew no one had the answers.
Right. And I want to share this before we go into Cozmeena, because I want you to talk about pocket hearts here.
Okay.
What I'm seeing behind you is this tremendous light going into your heart. Oh. So I don't know if it's Teddy or if it's an angel, but as we're talking about opening the heart, living in the place of an open heart of forgiveness and generosity and kindness, I'm seeing all this energy coming into your heart. So for those listeners who've gone through trauma, and any kind of trauma that they might have had, childhood trauma or anything that's happening with them, Lisa has gone through probably, one of the worst traumas one could imagine, the death of her husband in such a traumatic way, but we've all gone through traumas. And I'm seeing all this energy being infused in your heart as you're a vessel of heart warmth. And so it's no wonder that you have these heart pockets, because the energy, it's either, like I said, I don't know if it's Teddy or if it's an angel, but it's like this energy is coming into your heart, radiant. And for all those who are listening and watching, you are a conduit to help people to open their heart, to forgive, to have kindness, generosity, to be able to heal. That's what I'm seeing as this energy is pouring through you. But how did those pocket hearts come about? Is that
the pocket hearts? Yes, I'll show everybody one if I can do this. Okay, so you see that little heart? They're little clay hearts that I make out of that little, it's called polymer baking clay, Fimo or Sculpey. And I sit at night and I twist them up, and I guess I'm at least at 50,000 that I've given out, because I just love giving them. And they're a pay it forward or a pay it back for all the kindness and love that's been showered on the kids and I all these years. And it gives me the greatest joy to give them. And then they're received with amazing, amazing love. I mean, they're not mine. They came through me. They're an energetic connection from a really beautiful story that came about 3 days after 9/11. Understanding that I was a nurse and a 4-month-old. I had 2 other kids. Life was going on. Kids had to get to school. I mean, I was trying to keep it as normal as I could. But every morning by 9 o'clock, I would have 10 or 15 people just standing in my kitchen just to support me and be there with me, be there. But what I really did understand was they needed to be there for themselves. And that's something we need to understand, that it's okay. That, part of giving is you have to receive. The cycle of reciprocity is that in order to, when somebody's hurting, the people around them are hurting also. And for me to have blocked them would have blocked them from feeding their own souls. And giving is a really important part of being human, taking care of each other. We're called to do it in difficult times. We can't just watch somebody suffer and walk by It's just not what we are. So this friend of mine from church, a big guy who was the fire chief in the town next door, came into my kitchen, just showed up, had his hands in his pockets, big guy, mustache, like big, tall, burly man. And, he was I could see he was just kind of holding it together. And he walked in and he said, Lisa, I could cry telling you this. Lisa, I was at Ground Zero yesterday looking for Teddy, and I had this with me, and I want you to have it. And he pulled his hand out of his pocket, and there was this little silver coin with an angel embossed on it. He goes, it's a pocket angel. And I was like, wow, like I've never even heard of that. Now, what you have to understand in this story is that I was dying to get into the city to look for Ted.
Yeah.
He was my man. That was my city. Those were my towers. I'd had an enormous amount of business myself there. He'd worked there for 10 years. I mean, we were New Yorkers. It was killing me to not find him. I mean, this unbelievable, you've got to find your man, your baby, whoever it is, right? That fierceness. And I couldn't go because I had people in front of me. I had kids in my way, parents in my way. I mean, this is my self-talk telling you this, but just God, this is angst. I reached for that coin in his hand, and when I took it from him, I got full body chills. I got this wave of dizziness, and when I came out of it, I didn't have to go anymore.
Oh,
it's like I had been there already.
Yeah.
So that was a total game changer.
He's still here with you.
Ah,
Yeah, still in your heart. Yeah.
you made me cry, Lee. Stop. So these came about 5 years later, because Teddy was so much fun and he was so lighthearted and loving and adorable that I was playing with my kids, and I'm a crafter, so I was doing things with my hands. And they wanted to make little animals or whatever they were making. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make hearts. I'm going to make pocket hearts, and I'm going to give them out and pay it forward for all the love we've gotten. Because to receive that much is a lot. It's there's no word for it. I can't say it was a burden in any way. It was an unbelievable gift, but to pay back for the rest of my life, mind you. It's, I'm still a reciprocal person, and that person that doesn't want help, right? So I'm still who I am. But in doing that, I started making these hearts and giving them out. And the connectivity of them, they carry that energy in them. And it's not that I'm putting it there. They came through me, just as the Cozmeena brand was part of a download that I didn't even know the word download when it happened. In 2005 and 6, sat up bolt upright on the analyst's couch one day, because the rest of the backstory goes, within a week or so of 9/11, I could feel this power. It wasn't my brain courage. You asked about my strength and my courage. It's inherent in who we are. We are all inherently strong. It's just the challenges make our strength come out or not. So I felt this unbelievable driving knowing that I had to make something good come from 9/11, or the terrorists would have won, and that wasn't okay with me. And the only way I could think of making something good come from it was to figure it out, whatever it was. So I took my 40 first years and put them on the analyst couch, and I started digging. And I dug and I dug, and I figured out, I was figuring out micro stuff and macro stuff. It was like the lessons were coming this way, and the world and the globe and our society and culture, and here's my life, and they're playing out simultaneously. And so 4 years later, I don't know what my therapist said to me, and I don't know, or what happened that prompted it. I sat bolt upright on the couch, and I went, oh my God, I've got it. I get it. I know how to cure. I know how to save the world. Seriously, I know it's nuts. We all just have to be nice.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds completely trite and ridiculous. But years later, when I wrote the book, I realized it was because in my first 40 years, no one had ever been nice to me. And after 9/11, no one was ever not nice to me. So it was truly the kindness, unsolicited, genuine kindness, because people knew what had happened to me.
Right.
Because they would give me the extra pause. They would give the kids the extra pause because they knew our story. And so my prompt to take that to everyone else, we never know what someone's carrying with them. But I can promise you it's something big. And to give them that moment of consideration and grace, to not judge and not criticize and give them love. that's the forgiveness of the imperfections, right? Our perfect imperfection. None of us have it all going on, and perfection is impossible, not to mention ridiculous. But that's the whole, the kindness aspect is it's out there for all of us, and it starts with us, to ourselves and everyone else.
And gratitude, because we all have soul lessons. We didn't come into this life with, like there's that book, why do bad things happen to good people?
Right. I actually have that on my shelf. I just saw it.
Whatever that book from eons ago.
Why bad things happen to good people. Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, we all have soul lessons. We've all come in with these soul challenges. It's how do we step up to them? How do we how we become masters of our own emotions to be able to move through, like we talked about, those lower base frequencies of a fear, to step up, and you've been able to step up and move through. So perhaps, the death of your husband really, I'm just going to say this, maybe that was a gift from him to you, so for your part of your soul evolution.
Well, from what we've talked about and all the contracting done and the understanding that he knew he was going to be here a short amount of time, and that my kids are here to be with me, and whatever that meant, whatever our journeys are together. It seems that's how it's felt. My kids, we call ourselves Team Luckett, and that's all we are. We don't have much family, if any. Our friends are our family, or our family, friends' family. And, and it's been a really interesting life. And everything is kind of about the struggle, right? And reframing what we're in instead of reeling back from it, right? In that defensive position of fear, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Instead be like, okay, what's going to happen next? I'm leaning in. Teach me, show me, challenge me. Let me know what I'm capable of doing, because you are capable of doing pretty much everything that shows up for you. And
I have the framework that life doesn't have to be a struggle. We can learn our lessons with grace and ease. Agreed.
When I say struggle, I mean that it's not that things aren't happening to you, they're happening for you. Back to that. And yes, grace and ease, and grace Elohim, you and I talk about all the time, right? Yes. Elohim grace Elohim. Yes. We just have to allow and be a little disconnected from it, right? We need to stay detached, not disconnected, but in a healthy way.
So we just have a few minutes left. How can people find your book, The Light in 9/11? Where can they find it?
So it's on Amazon. It's on my little website, LisaLuckett.com. Please support your local booksellers. They can get it through Ingram Reps, Ingram Spark, or the Ingram catalog. If you want to ever do it for a book club, I'm happy to jump in and be on a Zoom with somebody who's reading it as a book group. We've had a lot of conversations about it. People, I just want you to let them to know that it's not about 9/11. 15 pages of it are about 9/11. The rest of it is about the journey that came with it. And it's really about healing from trauma. It's about choosing to see the light in your struggles and the healing power of kindness, and that it's just available for all of us.
And you're now doing life coaching, is that correct?
I am.
And so this story and your story has probably brought you to life coaching, which perhaps maybe you weren't, that's might not have been in your wheelhouse, right. But tell us a bit about that. We just got a couple more minutes here. Tell us a little bit about that to promote your life.
Thank you. So the life coaching is really an interesting thing. It's really about, unlike this interview, it's about being quiet, me asking questions and listening, which I'm excited to do. I'm excited to quiet down myself and be still and really be present for other people. Mm-hmm. And instead of, I've spent the last 15 years talking about this explosive understanding I was given, and now it's available in the book. I believe that trauma serves us, or as painful as it is, I'm not saying it's easy in any way, and that death is easy, but it is a part of our life experience here, and it's how we choose to allow it to process through us. And so the coaching, life coaching, is a really very interesting time, place you can go to just live your life better. It's a very positive thing. It's 80% going forward into the future and how to get where you want to go. Analysis and therapy are about figuring out why you make the choices you make. So they're like more about taking dysfunction or something broken and making it functional or healthy. And then coaching picks up where that healthy function can now be optimized, where you can actually really live that life you want to live. And it's really exciting. It's such an interesting skill set to have learned. And I thank you for asking me about it.
Oh, well, I just, you've been through a lot and you have a lot of wisdom and, you're quite articulate. So, you're the perfect life coach. So,
well, I'll try not to talk. That's what my promise to my clients, and I'm happy to talk to anybody. I'm really interested in just practicing the skill set and just really helping and serving. Much of what I'm about is value. There's a really great book that if you haven't read, I really recommend reading anyone in business right now. It's just such a refreshing little parable called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. Something like The Alchemist was the precursor to something like this. But it's just good living and a good way to go into the world, because it is about sharing and giving more value than you're being paid for. Just giving more with what you're serving, and it's for me, it's about connecting and helping people help themselves, right? Because we really all do have the skill set. It just hasn't really maybe been trained or taught by the people before us. And it's a brand new world. We can ask for this stuff and not be shamed, which is just fantastic.
Well, Lisa, thank you for being my guest today. It's always a delight. I'm happy to see you again. I haven't seen you for a year.
Very
I
nice
miss
to see
you.
you.
You
Me
just
too.
look fabulous.
I know. Next year.
Yeah, we gotta get together. Gotta get to New Jersey with my New Jersey people.
You
again,
do.
I know you guys are great. The Light, The Light in 9/11, Shocked by Kindness, Healed by Love by Lea Lockett. Get this book. It's a fascinating read. She's amazing. If you're struggling with any kind of trauma and want some life coaching, please call Lisa. Her website again is www.lealockett.com. And the Cozmeena, if you want to learn more about Cozmeena, is www.cozmeena.com. That's Cozmeena. So thank you, Miss Lisa. I love you.
Thank you, Miss Lea. Mwah. Love you guys. Right. Tiffany, thank you behind the scenes. Everybody have a great day today. Enjoy.
All right. Thanks, honey. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're welcome. So just to remind everybody again that this week we've got a lot happening. We're going to have those master classes on Goldylocks Productions with Tiffany White-Sage and myself starting October 2nd. We'll have 4 classes October 2nd, 9, 16, and 23, starting at 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be talking about New Earth Rising, that we're moving out of chaos into a new energy of heaven on earth, and that we do have the power to move ourselves from fear to love. So we are going to be discussing how we, as individuals, as new earth beings, we are here as humans on the planet, can move into our 5th dimensional frequency and beyond, living from our heart center, just like Lisa with the heart pockets, and moving from a place of fear into love, moving into our power. So join us. And again, if you want to sign up for those, again, go to GoldylocksProductions.com. I am having my beginning intuitive development class also on that same day. So busy girl. Going to have 2 of those. I'm going to have level 1 on October 2nd from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Level 2 is just a continuation of the beginning intuitive development class. And that will be October 16th. So we got October 2nd for level 1, October 16th for level 2 for those who are awakening to their spiritual gifts and want to tap in to learn more about their psychic and intuitive abilities. And you can certainly go to my website, which is leachapin.com, and take a look at all that I've been doing. Again, every Monday morning, I bring forth the mystical teachings of Mary Magdalene and Jeshua. I put those out on Facebook as well as on my website. And in addition, those audio recordings are available on my YouTube channel. So just Google my name, Lea Chapin, Leachapin, and you can access those recordings of my Mary Magdalene teachings every Monday morning. And then I do have a daily inspiration from Christ that I bring forth, daily meditations to soothe the mind, to help people to move from fear to love. So if you have any interest in receiving those daily meditations, they're very short. They're about 10 minutes. I do them every day to help people, again, to calm themselves, to begin to listen to the still, quiet voice. But these are inspirational messages to help us to be at peace. So again, you can find those on my website at leachapin.com, or you can email me at leachapin@gmail.com. And take a look at my books, The Divine Union, The Love Story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. It talks about their love story as young children, but also the big premise here of this story is their sacred contract as they brought forward their journey of divine sacred union onto the planet to help us to move back into balance, which we are all moving into, that we're all sharing here on Inspiration from Spirit. And the 12 Master Teachings of Christ, the true essence of Christ's teachings. The first lesson of love, the last lesson is joy. I brought those teachings 17 years ago, but they're pertinent today as they are 17 years ago. So take a look, go to my website, and have a blessed day. We'll see you next week. Namaste. And again, thank you to Lisa for being my guest on my show. It was fascinating. Have a great day. Blessings.
Become a Goldylocks Productions VIP patron. Receive exclusive access to live stream special and other epic perks. Join the Goldylocks Productions VIP community today.